All right, and we are live. Welcome back to another episode of From College to Combine. I am your host, Michael Sicoli, and with me is the microphone-wielding Riley Millette. How are you doing today, Riley?
Good.
You look like an absolute child right now. Everyone that is not looking at this on a video format should 100% check it out on YouTube because
I thought the hat
this
made me look
is...
older. Does
What's
it not?
that?
I thought the hat would make me look older.
Make you look... When it's backwards? No. Maybe
No,
if it was forward, maybe. You know.
you look
Try
good.
try forward. Try forward.
All right, here we go. I don't think I look good like that, but
You know, I don't think you. I think you look better with the hat backwards, but I think you look older this way. I think you look older with it in front. So it's either like you choose to be 16 or you chose to be like 30 and not pushing prospects.
you're just a curmudgeon. This is the style now.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I am a curmudgeon, and in curmudgeon fashion, I'm gonna get this immediately back on track. Welcome back, everybody. To our final show before the draft taking place tomorrow. So, with that, we have a couple of important announcements. One, a lot of live shows you should be checking out, a lot of options you have, and the two that you should 100% be checking out. I know for Frequency Stake is doing a live show at, I believe, I'm blank on the name, but one of the best places in the Quad Cities. So, definitely check them out there. And I personally will be hosting the IDPGuys show tomorrow with Club Fantasy. Shout out to my guy Joe Zola over there. Excited to host with him from 7:30 to midnight, or whenever the first round ends. We're going to be there breaking down the draft, every single pick as it goes. Live reactions. We're going to have a whole bunch of guests pop in. It's going to be a ball. So a lot of different orgs involved in a lot of preparations going into it. Very excited to be there. Definitely check it out tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern. And not too late as well. Rookie Hub, the Rookie Hub, the Rookie Mag on IDPGuys. Get yourself a subscription. Profiles on every player you could possibly ask for, offense and defense. Well worth it because as I was doing my mock draft and just everything that I've done, really helpful to have a consistent one-stop source for all of it. But that's all I have on that front. Riley, you ready to get into the news of the week?
Yeah, let's get into the breaking news that just broke 5 minutes ago from Ian Rappaport.
What just broke 5 minutes ago? Did I miss something?
The Cardinals picked up Kyler's fifth-year option.
Yeah.
Not a surprise. They were probably going to do that no matter what, even if they were planning on trading him. But yeah, it kind of gives some clarity on the situation. I never assumed he would be traded. It's seemed that it's been trending that way for the last week or so, but that is noteworthy.
Yeah, and the big thing with fifth-year options right now is that they're due by May 2nd. So a lot of teams are making these decisions right now. This is kind of, as last minute as it gets. And Kyler's not alone. The Jets exercised on Quinnen Williams. Montez Sweat got his fifth-year extension. So did Devin White, T.J. Hawkinson, and I believe I'm missing a name. But no, I guess not. But those names all got their fifth-year options. They will all be under contract for the next 2 years. Daniel Jones is a name to watch out for because that's someone who is fifth-year eligible. It's been talked about, whispered about the entire offseason. The Giants have not made that decision yet. I'll be very interested to see if they exercise that option by May 2nd. Wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. I don't think they will either, but it's definitely something that bears watching out. So the other big news, obviously, was the Melvin Gordon news that dropped yesterday. Well, Melvin Gordon and the Broncos reached a 1-year deal worth, what was it, $4 or $5 million, Riley?
$5 million.
$5 million for Melvin Gordon to return to the Broncos, where he spent his 2021 season, put up over 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, was pretty good for them. Very effective, for real life. And while this has got to be, a kick in the pants in the wrong way for Javonte Williams owners, as you and I can both speak to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, it's my first reaction is it's the same whenever I have a guy who gets some competition added to his position room. Is that at the end of the day he'll be fine. It does lower his ceiling, but I'm still confident in Javonte that he'll eventually take over that backfield. I mean, although Melvin Gordon has been pretty steady in terms of injury in the last couple of years. He is getting up there in age. Not to prey on his downfall or anything, but that is just, the nature of fantasy football.
Yeah, I mean, he's 29 years old. It's already getting up. At this point in the offseason, this is as good as you could possibly hope for as a Melvin Gordon owner. I agree with you with Javonte Williams on that side, where Javonte Williams is probably a buy right now in Dynasty for anyone overreacting. The ceiling is now closer to the RB11 range as opposed to, top 5, top 3 that you were hoping. But it's still something that it bears watching out. Melvin Gordon, the deal is $5 million. The base salary is $2.5 million. So it's a very incentive-heavy deal, but it's a one-year deal. So it's something that gets built in. And I'm very interested in seeing how Melvin Gordon fits because this is now a different system. It's Nathaniel Hackett running it, running the show. It's not. Oh wow, I'm blanking. Pat Shurmur as the offensive coordinator. It's Nathaniel Hackett running it. So, do you expect an AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones type of split?
Yeah, no, I totally do, and I mentioned earlier that I think Javonte will be the Aaron Jones of that backfield split. Not in terms of the type of player, just in terms of the fact that Javonte is the better player. I think he gets most of the work because he's the better player, and Melvin Gordon will come in and clean up the scraps like AJ Dillon did for Aaron Jones.
That's not what happened though. Like in terms of yes, I completely agree. Javonte Williams is the better player, but AJ Dillon was not cleaning up the scraps. He was kind of leading the way.
Scraps, but Aaron Jones got a lot of important work. He got some receiving down work, and he got some goal line work.
He got the receiving down work, and he got some goal line work. The problem is if that gets split, and it all depends on how. If this Broncos offense takes off, it's scoring left, right, and center, averaging 27 a week. If that happens, there's room for both of them. They're both going to be very good for fantasy, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where Melvin Gordon goes in drafts, but for zero RB drafts, he's going to be probably a real target for me in the later rounds. But we can move on to another piece of news. Nothing huge for fantasy, but a little bit clarifying for the draft. The Jaguars extended Cam Robinson 3 years. I believe it was $54 million. Gave him the bag. And for fantasy, it's status quo. It's nice to have a left tackle blocking for Trevor Lawrence. He's not amazing, but he's good enough. And all this means to me is that Ikem Ekwonu is pretty much off the board for 101, which I wasn't anticipating, but I think this confirms it, right?
Yeah, for sure. They're gonna go edge rusher at number 1, definitely.
Yep, completely agree. And on other news, and just as ground shaking, the Eagles are trying to shop Jalen Reagor.
I don't even know why you put this on here.
Oh, I put it in just so it's just to laugh. Nobody's going to trade for Reagor. If they do, it's a 7th. He won't be anything when he gets somewhere else. Good.
All right. Yeah. Cool. Let's move on.
I missed that piece of news. I just thought it was funny, and everyone should enjoy bringing up Jalen Reagor. It's just good memories for all those TCU truthers. So, other news: the Giants have been shopping not just Kadarius Toney, which has been the big talk of the week, but also Darius Slayton. Now, I'm on the record as a known Kadarius Toney anti-hater, whatever you want to call it. Don't think he's all that. Don't think he's that good. Off-field problems existed before; they're coming up now. But he did also attend voluntary workouts. That's a good step in the right direction for him. The reports have been weird. What have you heard from the Kadarius Toney front?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it's been pretty tight-lipped about that situation, and at this point, I'll wait and see what happens at workouts. And honestly, I'll wait and see what happens with the Giants draft. And basically, whoever they take with their day 1 and 2 selections will be telling of what they plan to do with that, which is obviously important for Kadarius Toney's stock.
Yeah, it would obviously be a very bad look for him to flame out after just 1 year, especially with someone with the off-field concerns that he has. I think he's on the roster week 1. I can't imagine he actually gets traded. That seems to be where the reports are trending. And after reports that the Giants wanted a haul for him, I don't think anyone's paying a haul, an arm, and a leg for Kadarius Toney. So Darius Slayton, I am a little bit interested in. I think Darius Slayton does have some juice, and he just has really been buried on the Giants. But that's the type of deal I don't see them making because he's a very cheap option, a very good depth piece to have. So you'll see as news continues to evolve there. But other news, Darren Waller. There's some rumors ever since Davante Adams came over that Darren Waller was going to get traded. Between the cap, between the injuries last season, and just where does he fit in this depth chart of target and passing. That was quickly put to bed by Derek Carr on social media, who promptly said no chance to Darren Waller moving on. Does this firmly close the door for you as well in those rumors?
I mean, I guess I wouldn't be totally shocked if they ended up trading Darren Waller. I mean, if we remember the beginning of last season, we said Darren Waller is going to get 18 targets a game, and he did get 18 targets, maybe not exactly 18, but a crap ton
in one game.
First game. And then he dealt with injuries and inconsistency for the rest of the year. Hunter Renfrow took over, and now they obviously have Davante Adams, and they got Josh Jacobs more involved in the receiving game. So if they moved on from Darren Waller, I wouldn't be totally shocked. But again, at this point, based on how little evidence we have of a potential trade, I would put it at maybe a 5% chance that he's not on their roster week 1.
Yeah, I would be shocked after this kind of public statement. I think it would be a horrific look for the organization and Derek Carr. They need to keep happy that they pay the man. So, yeah, I think he stays on the roster. I would have thought he would have been a real trade candidate, but I don't think Derek Carr wants to go anywhere. Something to note as well, that Darren Waller's rise and ascension, the breakout, that came partially because John Gruden made him his pet project. John Gruden could not speak highly enough of Darren Waller. He got him on the field. He got all that happening. We now have Josh McDaniels coming in. That's a new system. We have Davante Adams coming in. You have Hunter Renfrow ascending. You have the up-and-coming Bryan Edwards. And there's just a lot of names that I'm so happy you didn't interrupt me. But
I'm done commenting on the Bryan Edwards. I'm really done with it.
Fair enough, but it's fair. It's also it's going to be interesting to see where Darren Waller fits in this offense. I'm very curious to see how fantasy drafters are going to be approaching him come draft day for redraft and all those formats. Where I don't know, he was a 3rd round pick. Now he's probably hovering around that 6th round range. I'm probably still hands off, but time will tell on that. The other news, of course, is out of Cincinnati. T. Higgins is going to miss the rest of offseason workouts. He's still expected to be ready for preseason. I'd start, putting some red flags out if he starts missing those workouts, but I also wouldn't be surprised. He suffered a torn labrum at the end of the season, had surgery a month or 2 ago to deal with that. So, something to monitor as camp approaches. Nothing to raise the alarm about now, but that's a genuinely painful injury to come back from. Any concerns on that front? You just want to keep going?
I mean, as with any injury, I'm not concerned until players start missing at real time, or there is reports that there's a real risk of re-injury. Which with a labrum, it's kind of tricky like that, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah,
it doesn't change how I'm going to draft him if that means anything.
Yeah. And on the same subject of injury, Elijah Mitchell of the 49ers, breakout running back in 2021, had a cleanup on his knee this offseason. Now, he was someone that, he was fighting through things at the end of the year. And this is something like I think you might not think it as noteworthy, but this is the type of thing that I have a gut feeling is going to surface in August, where all of a sudden something's flaring up. We're going to, dig through our reports, and this happened in the offseason. I don't know. This is fairly procedure. This has happened before. Running backs get this. But, for a sophomore year running back, who's just had 1 year, and with the history of injury that he had, and hell, even the 49ers, this is something I do want to watch out for. This is just as concerning to me as the torn labrum somehow for T. Higgins.
I mean, I was never fully on the Elijah Mitchell train to begin with.
Neither was I.
And he definitely flashed, but I'm always wary of guys who, sixth round pick, I believe he was, and he walks into the very cushy San Francisco run system, and he tears the cover off the ball, and now he's got injury concerns. I mean, it's an avenue I've been down with Raheem Mostert, and I'm now very wary of it ever since. So it's something to watch. I probably wasn't going to be drafting him anyway, and this is only going to, kind of make that worse. But it's still early in the process. We'll see how it turns out.
Yep. And keeping it in San Francisco, Deebo Samuel, the trade updates, obviously that's been raging through the week. We talked about it on the show last week. Just a final. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit later when we get to some hot takes about the draft. But anything new on the Deebo Samuel front you want to bring up, Riley?
I mean, not particularly. We were talking about potential trades earlier, but we'll also get to that a little bit later.
Absolutely. And I will go into our last piece of news. This is something I forced on the doc. Shout out to Bilal Powell. As a New York-born person and constantly surrounded by Jet fans, Bilal Powell has a special place in the community. Very good guy, very well respected, a good player when he was on the field. And I'm just happy that he was able to sign his one-day contract, retire as a Jet. Very nice story to a guy that I haven't heard the name from in a while. But that is our final bit from the news issue. I can see you shaking your head as I talk about Bilal Powell.
I hadn't even heard about that.
So you just saw a Jets legend pop up on the screen, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, good for him, I guess.
No, rude and dismissive. But going to our second segment, we're going to bring up a Smoke and Fire draft edition. Yeah, I should have teased that at the front of the show, but we've done Smoke and Fire before, but we are now one day out from the draft. There is a ton of misinformation and rumors swirling all about. So let's start with the Giants. All right. Recent reports are saying that the Giants are interested in trading out of 7. Now, this is something I have heard from almost every team in this draft because a lot of teams try to trade back. This draft class is not all that. There are tiers everywhere, and there's a lot of teams with multiple first-round picks. I think the Giants are totally possible trading out 7. I wouldn't project it as that, but I think that's somewhere where a rebuilding team could try to move back. I view the Texans at 13 as a lock to move back. That's someone that's a pain to mock because I'm fairly confident Houston's not making that pick. But Riley, what are your thoughts on the whole trading back system of the draft right now?
I would put the Saints as the most likely team to trade up into this spot. They are heavily invested in getting an offensive tackle in this class, and trading up to the 7th overall pick would all but guarantee you one of the top 3 or 4 tackles in this class. Ekwonu and Evan Neal will be gone at that point, but you could easily land Charles Cross at that spot, so long as, depending on what the Carolina Panthers do, who could also trade out of their spot since they have little to no capital in this draft. And the Giants themselves, who have 1 second, 2/3, not a whole lot of capital to go around. And for a team with so many needs, it would make sense to trade out of one of those picks to a team that's willing to pay up. So yes, I would believe that they're willing to trade out of that pick.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think a lot of people are going to be looking for that in this year's class. Another name to watch, Thursday you're talking about that. Probably not going to be a day one name because George Pickens out of Georgia, the wide receiver that I personally like a lot, I think Raleigh also does, has been sliding. And this adds up. This is a little bit more fire to me. And I don't like it, but the report is that he's been sliding to deeper part of day 2. If I'd see a world he could slip to day 3 at this rate by the talks I'm hearing. It's also it is the weakest smoke screens, but we've been hearing it for a while with George Pickens that there's some attitude concerns, there's some interview concerns where he's not popping off in those areas. And those are things that we have no way of checking. So it's kind of relying on the faith of the reporting we're hearing and whether they're properly evaluating what they're hearing or not. But it's a shame, but it's also something that was a worry at the beginning of the pre-draft process. And when you kind of connect those dots along the way, I do put a little bit of stock in it. What do you make of the George Pickens situation?
I think I put less stock in it than you do. I'm kind of halfway between smoke and fire on this one. I've kind of taken everything I knew about reporting around the NFL draft at this time of the year and thrown it out the window. I almost don't even listen to it. Case in point, the 49ers last year, everyone swore they knew what they were doing, and no one knew what they were doing. So
someone knew something, Riley. Someone knew that they weren't taking Mac Jones.
No smart. If you're so smart.
Someone said that they weren't taking Mac Jones, but that's fine.
Yeah, I believe the reporting, and I was wrong. So I'm gonna believe that a good player who has been touted as a good player, went to a good school, had a decent amount of production, even though he has injury history. I do put a little bit of stock into his interview process, but I'm not gonna sit here and believe that that's the reason he might fall out of day 2. So I would put him as most likely he's going in the second round. If he went at the top of the third, I wouldn't be entirely surprised, but I would be pretty shocked if he went all the way to the bottom of day 2.
Let me phrase it to you like this. Does he have a higher chance of going the 4th round or the 1st round?
I think
back of the 1st round with, I don't know, maybe, the Chiefs, Packers, someone trading up into 32, or even the Lions sitting pretty and taking him there.
I think
or
it's
slipping to the 4th.
That he slips to the 4th purely because of the injury and nothing else. I mean, we've seen plenty of guys fall because of potential injuries. Like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah fell out of the 1st round. I thought he was a great player. He fell out of the 1st round because of injury concerns, and he's been a pretty good player for the Browns ever since. So if he falls, that'll be the reason. I don't think he does.
Yeah, I would agree that it would be closer to round 4. I think it's a scary, possibility. I do think he'll be taken on in that 3rd round range. I think he has kind of talked himself out of round 2. But we could also move on to the Falcons. Kind of a interesting situation for the Falcons where a lot, they could go a lot of different situations. They need an edge rusher. They could use Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, but they could also use a quarterback. And we talked about on our mock show last week. I think you had them taking Jermaine Johnson or no, not Jermaine Johnson, but an edge rusher. You had them taking an edge rusher, and I had them taking, I believe it was Kyle Hamilton. Now, since a week later, I've dove into a lot more information. More things have come to light. I have since switched that pick to Malik Willis out of Liberty. This was before I saw this report, by the way. This was not solely based on this, but this is their GM saying it in their pre-draft process. Obviously, they're going to add somebody. They're not entering the year with Marcus Mariota and Felipe Franks. That would make any user not go to the game despite an awesome stadium in Atlanta. So I do put stock into, yes, they're obviously going to come out of this class with a quarterback, and I do think they use number 8 to do it.
I don't think so. I don't think this is the class that the Falcons, if they identify their guy and based on Arthur Smith's past quarterbacks and the fact that he's bringing in Marcus Mariota, Malik Willis seems like the guy that they would bring in. They just have too many other needs. They have a decent amount of capital later in rounds that we're probably going to see some quarterbacks in this class fall. Like, I'll get to it later, but I don't think very many of these quarterbacks go super high in the draft. So they have 2 second-round picks. If Sam Howell or maybe Matt Corral or Desmond Ridder fall to them in the 2nd round, I could see the Falcons taking one of them. But when there's going to be elite edge rushers on the board like Jermaine Johnson, maybe an elite offensive tackle is on the board at number 8, I can't imagine they pass on either of those options.
I would agree. I have pretty much all the top tier edge and tackle prospects off the board in my mock. My final mock's coming out tomorrow as well. Stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter to check that out. Just look up my name. It's wonderful. But I personally, if Charles Cross is the only one on the board, which of all the top edge rushers, I have those guys going before. I have I have those edge rushers going before. I have all the other offensive tackles being taken by the Giants at 7 and before that. Do they take Charles Cross? I think they take Malik Willis. I don't know. Every rebuild starts with taking you're taking your guys for the future. If they identify Malik Willis as their franchise QB, they cannot pass on him. But that's whether that's true or not. I do view it as a good scheme fit, somebody that can move, can operate that system, the play action better than Matt Ryan could. And with Mariota in town, he can take all the time he needs. So, final thing I want to bring up, I added the show doc late because it's been a big discussion today, this week, just because people want to go crazy with it. Who is going number 1, Riley?
Aiden Hutchinson, number 1.
That is correct. Aiden Hutchinson, number 1, because all of a sudden Travon Walker shot himself to number 1 on the board, and then I don't know if you followed Twitter earlier today, but then Kayvon Thibodeau got himself up there for a bit, and then Ikem Ekwonu got himself up there until Cam Robinson. It just speaks to the volatility of this class. But I also agree it's still going to be Hutchinson. I do not care what Vegas is saying in this instant that Travon Walker could be that guy. I refuse to believe a guy with 9.5 sacks is going number 1 overall. 9.5 career sacks, mind you, 6.5 in 2021. I choose that. I do not believe that's the case. I think they'll stick with Hutchinson. I think it's all final week smokescreen. But people want to give it attention, and I will also give it attention because I have I can't hold myself back. Okay, so let's jump into our third and final segment of the day. 25 minutes in, we are rolling, crushing it, Riley. You know, your voice, it sounds more melodious than normal. You know,
I've tried. It's the microphone.
Is it the microphone?
I turned it on this week.
Oh, you every time I try to banter you with you, Riley, you know, I regret it. I deeply, you know.
You will not out banter me a single time. Try me.
Yeah, I will, because we're going to go into bold takes, and I'm sure we're going to disagree with each other on this. Bold takes, always a fun thing to do with the draft because they tend to be right, because we don't know what we're doing. And I'm not talking about us two. I'm talking about the entire industry, because everyone gets this wrong. So the inexplicable becomes totally possible. And let's go right off the bat. I'm going to kick it off. We're each going to go and give 3 bold takes about what could happen tomorrow night. And I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to say the Jets do a mid-draft day trade. They trade number 10. They trade number 38 for Deebo Samuel, a very similar price to what the from what the Packers got from the Raiders for Devontae Adams. The market goes as it wants to, and I think that's the deal that gets done on draft day.
I wouldn't really rule out of question. I just don't think they trade Deebo, honestly. I think Deebo is staying. I think they'll work it out. The only reason Deebo rose to the prominent role he was in is not because he played running back. It's because he was able to be schemed into space by Kyle Shanahan. And I think once the two sides can meet at length and kind of discuss the contract situation, I think this will kind of simmer down. And I believe Deebo Samuel is a 49er.
Yeah, it's tough because John Lynch obviously went out and said everything in the right direction of extending Deebo. We want him here and all that. Deebo's kind of stayed on the mysterious side of it on social media, but in terms of bold takes, I think the Jets are desperate to find someone. And they're either going to take your wide receiver at 10, or they could do it in the second round. I've tilted them taking one at 10. It's either Garrett Wilson or Deebo Samuel. And I think one of those things is going to come true Thursday night.
Can I get into one of my bold takes? Because it's directly contingent on the one you just said.
Please.
Let's look at the overall picks that the Jets have. They have number 4, number 10 in the first round, number 38, number 35 in the second round, and number 69 in the third round, which is what leads me to believe that they're not going to draft a wide receiver at number 10 overall. I think they're going to draft Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. The Jets are a team that has really benefited from top-end safety play. They've had Jamal Adams and Marcus May in town over the last number of years, and they both provided some really solid defensive snaps for them. Now the Jets are playing for Robert Saleh, defensive-minded head coach from the 49ers, and the Jets are in a really good spot to take a wide receiver later in the draft with 35 and 38 overall. That's Sky Moore range. Christian Watson, if they like him, that's probably where you're going to have to take him. If you like him, George Pickens, even if they like him, they could take him there. Or if we believe the reports, they could take him with number 69 overall in the third round.
Jahan Dotson could be around in the second round.
Yes, Jahan Dotson. He absolutely could be there in the second round. I think there are a lot of options, and when there's a blue chip player available like Kyle Hamilton, I think you have to, kind of turn to the tier-based drafting system and say the best player available is Kyle Hamilton. We are set up in a pretty good position to take a wide receiver, which is a strong area of need later in the draft.
I totally see it happening, or I totally see this as a possibility. I think Kyle Hamilton's fantastic. I still think they're going to go wide receiver because I'm not enamored with those second round names. Once Jahan Dotson's off the board, there's a real drop off, and I really don't think that the Jets are going to risk it after the effort they've put in to find a wide receiver one. I think they're just going to answer that. They have tackled that wide receiver position more than or tried to more than any other position on that roster. They have Jordan Whitehead, free safety. Ashton Davis and LaMarcus Joyner are capable, strong safeties. But you're entirely right. Kyle Hamilton is a legitimate star, a near can't miss prospect. And, for a team just looking for talent, it does make a lot of sense. I do see that as a real possibility. So this is less fighting than we thought. I thought it would be, Riley.
I think we're going to fight on this next one, though. Perhaps.
Are we going to fight on this next one? Because
we're going to fight on this one.
I'm going to pull it up right here, and I'm going to say that the Packers take a first-round wide receiver.
That wasn't the one I thought you were going to read, but...
Oh, well, you know what? I thought this one was just as wild because do you know the last time the Packers took a first-round wide receiver? I'm just curious if you know that.
Wasn't it like 2005 or something crazy?
It's something like that. I'm pretty embarrassing that I can't find it right now, but for reference, I'll just say this because I know this by heart. Ted Thompson, the former general manager before Brian Gutekunst right now, over 13 years, never took a wide receiver in the first round. So we are talking over a decade. We are talking years and years since this last happened. And I think this is it. I think trading Davante Adams is the final straw. You cannot go into the year with a second-round wide receiver and Sammy Watkins and Alan Lazard and Robert Tonyan. It cannot happen. They will take a guy in the first round. I have them taking Treylon Burks currently. Again, I've adjusted my mock over the last week because I am just, new news. I had more time. I dove into everything. Final version coming out tomorrow. Stay tuned. But I think that this is the year. This is the year they break the trend. Gutekunst did come out and say that Aaron Rodgers will have a say in all these decisions in some, one way or another before they're in the building and after they're in the building. And I have to imagine deep down that Aaron Rodgers was promised this before, when he was going to sign that extension. So I guess you're not going to fight me on this, Riley, but I'm curious. What do you got for me?
I have them taking Chris Olave currently, which I've done plenty of tinkering on this mock draft as well, and for all the same reasons. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was this close to leaving that team because he didn't like how they were building the rest of the team. So I think it can't happen that they let Aaron Rodgers, the back-to-back MVP, the guy they just signed to a super mega Nova extension, and let him play with Alan Lazard, Robert Tonyan, who are the returners, Sammy Watkins, who has severely flamed out, and Amari Rodgers, who he was barely on the field when he was a rookie.
Went back
outside of Lazard, who has been on the team for a few years, and he played a couple of good games last year. Robert Tonyan, who had that good season, did not play very much at all last year. So they're now they'll be 2 years removed from that connection. There's just no chemistry on that field whatsoever, and that is a waste of Aaron Rodgers.
I went back and I found the year. They have not taken a first-round wide receiver since Javon Walker in 2002. It has been 20 years since the Packers have invested in a first-round wide receiver. That streak breaks tomorrow night on day one. I'm very confident about that. And if not, whatever. I get to laugh because it'll be a freaking joke. And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers will retire as well. So, do you want to get to the one where we fight? I think I'll fight you on your third one. And I think you're going to fight me on my third one.
Yeah. So, all right. Here's one of my bold takes.
I skipped past your number two, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Go for it. Go. Give me your number two.
My number two is that I think there will only be three quarterbacks taken in the first round. I have let's go back and take a look. I have Malik Willis going to the Panthers at number 6. That's barring any trade down. I'm not going to try to predict trades. That's just insane. I have the Saints taking Kenny Pickett at number 16 overall, and the Lions taking Desmond Ridder at 32. So Matt Corral, not a first round pick. He's kind of been a popular guy to get drafted in the first round. And a while ago, I said we can get cute with our mock drafts and we can say, oh, but the quarterbacks are very good this year. No matter what, the quarterbacks will be drafted high just because that's how the position is. But going through the mock draft and seeing a lot of the other players on the board, this is another strong wide receiver year where I think I have 5 or 6 wide receivers going in the first round. It's a top-heavy edge group. I have 4 edge rushers going in the first 8 picks. And it's tough, especially with the quarterback carousel having slowed down. A lot of teams have found their quarterbacks, right? They're like, what are the teams that are still in the market for a quarterback? I mean, the Saints, the Panthers, the Lions aren't really in the market for a quarterback. They can take one if they like it. The Steelers could take a quarterback, but
the
Seahawks could take one, but all of those other teams have a lot of needs that they could address anyway, especially with what they're projected to do. Like, I fully expect the Saints to trade up because they have 2 first-round picks. They could take an offensive tackle. If they really like Garrett Wilson, maybe they'll trade up a few spots for him. Maybe they'll trade up for Jameson Williams if they project that he goes off the round off the board that early. I don't have that feeling about the quarterbacks this year.
And I'm just going to bring up my third bold take, and I'm going to stay at the top of yours because we're in the same vein here, where I think that I have 4 quarterbacks going in the first round. You have 3, and I think that'll be the same number of wide receivers, which is wild given how people are touting this wide receiver group compared to the quarterback group. I think that it's a very small chance. I view the Panthers and Lions as near locks to take one at 6 and 32. Those, I feel very confident that those picks are going to go quarterback given the Panthers' lack of draft picks. They're complete sick of, I'm done with Sam Darnold attitude. And given the Lions' ability to get a 5th-year option at 32, I think those are locks. So then of the 2 other spots that need to be going in, teams reach out quarterbacks. That happens. I think you said earlier in the offseason, you acknowledged that, and I think that's still true now. And I think now that we're through the process, guys have found people that they want between the Seahawks, the Steelers, the Saints, I'm blanking on teams off the top of my head. We just named them. But, like, there's a lot of teams that can get a quarterback. And all those teams do have other needs, but no team that needs a quarterback is ever, needless. Like, they always have other positions to fill. The Texans even, they could trade up or something or take one at 13. But I don't know. I disagree. I think they will. I think there's going to be 4 quarterbacks going off the board. I view the Steelers as maybe, unfortunately, maybe not, as a lock to take a quarterback at 20. Not as much as Detroit and the Panthers, but I don't know. I think quarterbacks are going to go as they normally go.
All right, that's interesting. Interesting you say that. Let's go to bold take number 3, huh? Why don't we? Because I think you're going to fight me on this one.
Yeah, well, I gave you I already gave my third one in conjunction with yours, so please.
We're going to talk about Jordan Davis from
Let's talk about Jordan Davis
from Georgia. I have him falling to the Bills at number 25 in this mock draft. A lot of the mock drafts that I've seen have him going to the Ravens at 14 overall, which is a good spot for him. I can't get it out of my head that defensive tackle has become somewhat of a devalued position in the draft in the last couple of years. Christian Barmore fell for other reasons. He had some character issues coming into the draft, but he got drafted by the Patriots in the 2nd round, and he was really good for them. He had like the 2nd most pressures for any rookie in the NFL last season. So based on that fact, regardless of what Christian Barmore was able to do last year, I don't see, especially how this draft is going to end up falling, I think, with wide receivers, tackles, and edge rushers, kind of ruling the first 20 picks. I think it'll be hard for Jordan Davis to sneak in there. Even though he had a really good combine, he had freakish numbers. I get that, but it's based on how I think the board will fall and where the talent is coming from in terms of position this year. I don't see him in the top 25. Or I see him going at 25.
And I think I'd be very surprised if he slips outside of the top 20 because every reason you just said, devalue position because you got to do something different. Jordan Davis is different. Like there's there's definitely concerns. If you put him on an every down basis, can that athleticism still work? He never exceeded 2.5 sacks in a year. Who's to say he's going to do that on the next level? He also, there are a lot of, concerns. He wasn't talked about as this top 20 pick before the combine, so obviously production didn't match that. But the team that's going to, there are teams that will take a shot on this. There are teams that will take a shot on a 341-pound defensive tackle running a 4.78, which is in 100th percentile speed score. I'm not making that up. That is in the 100th percentile as a speed score. Someone's going to take a chance on it earlier. People take a chance on the raw athletic potential way earlier than we always think. And I personally think that's going to be Howie Roseman at 18. I think the Eagles will do it. They know the value of an elite defensive tackle, and the Eagles could use the help. So I think there's a lot of teams that are just, they shoot for upside. It happens every year. I think Jordan Davis is the pinnacle example of that.
And that's all true. And the way that defenses are played today, defensive tackles are important for kind of forcing some of these more stagnant pass pocket passers outside the pocket, and that's all well and good. That this is more of an indictment, not an indictment, but a commentary on where the talent is coming from. The fact that I think it's like 5 wide receivers going in the top 20, ending with Treylon Burks is in the top 20. I think, that makes 5. And then Chris Olave going not too far behind him.
Yeah, and I only have 4 in the first round. So I guess that's where the discrepancy is. I think that, there's not many defensive tackles that can do what Jordan Davis has the potential of. It's just ceiling. NFL teams draft for ceiling all the time. And elite defensive tackles do make differences on the field. Whether he's going to hit that, that's not my point. It's just what NFL GMs are going to perceive him as. And they're going to perceive him as a unicorn. Sports teams love unicorns, man. That's my quote, and leave it on a T-shirt. And if that is not a perfect line to end it off on, honestly, unless you have a final point, because I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty happy with that.
No, I wouldn't dare. Please.
Okay. Well, fantastic, because that's our show. That is a fantastic show, Riley. I think you did a great job, even with your hat backwards.
I did.
So thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Again, I want to give a shout-out to both For Frequency's Sake and IDP Guys for hosting us on this, putting our content out there. Tomorrow, again, live shows for both For Frequency's Sake and IDP Guys. I will be hosting the latter on YouTube, on Facebook, on multiple different platforms. I believe it's up to 8 or 9 or 10. It's crazy. Through Club Fantasy. Awesome rotating guest host. Awesome guy Joe Zolo is going to be hosting with me. It's going to be a gas. I think that's the terminology the kids are using nowadays. Mm-hmm. So I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. And given that you have 2 amazing options, I would just simply set up a monitor on your left, a monitor on your right, have the TV in the middle, just full blast, just AirPod in each ear. Couldn't go better. So that will be our show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You can follow me at Michael__Sicoli on Twitter. Follow Riley at Riley_Millette. Obviously, you can check out For Frequency's Sake and IDP Guys at FFSQC and at IDP Guys. Check it out. The draft is tomorrow. We're excited. We'll be back next week to give our draft reactions. I'll see you guys tomorrow. No need to wait for next week. Have a good night, everybody.